Hello, this is our Voice Stories channel.
That's all you deserve. Her words sliced through the music, sharper than any knife at the table. The laughter that followed echoed through the ballroom, polished and practiced, but at my table, there was only a piece of untouched bread and the heavy weight of truth in my pocket. I smiled, faint and tired, trying not to show the storm under my ribs. The USB drive in my coat felt heavier than metal, heavier than honesty itself. My name's Lila Monroe, 35 years old. A documentary filmmaker. I spend my life chasing other people's truths, capturing them frame by frame, because for as long as I can remember, mine was dismissed or rewritten by others. Tonight, 60 guests filled the room, glasses chiming, cameras flashing, polite chatter dancing around my father, who stood beaming beneath a chandelier like he owned the light itself. He'd always loved the spotlight, blind to the shadows it cast. I'd come prepared to expose those shadows, to tear down the illusion my family built from lies and silence. But when I saw him laugh, really laugh, I froze. The truth sat in my palm, burning with purpose, and for the first time I hesitated. Would revealing it destroy only the guilty, or would it also break the man who never learned how to love me? Sometimes revenge looks just like mercy, until the moment you have to choose which one you'll live with. Would you set your family on fire just to finally be seen? Or would you walk away, still invisible, but intact? The truth was ready to explode. I wasn't. The forgotten daughter. When people say family, they imagine warmth, shared dinners, laughter echoing off the walls, arms that make you feel safe. Mine always felt like frost. After my mother died, my father remarried so quickly it felt like whiplash. His new wife, Celeste, had a smile like glass, bright, cold, and ready to shatter if you touched it wrong. She brought her daughter, Brianna, a girl who could do no wrong. From that day forward, I stopped being a daughter and became background noise. Celeste dressed Brianna in silk and pearls, took her to ballet, called her my pride and joy. To me, she offered nothing but silence, and a growing list of all the ways I'd never measure up. At dinners, I was the shadow pouring water, the joke no one laughed at. When I tried to speak, she'd tilt her head and sigh, "Why do you always make things awkward?" My father never defended me, his eyes fixed on his balance sheets instead of bruised hearts. I learned early, if you can't belong, you observe. So I did. At 16, I used what I earned tutoring kids who had real families to buy my first second-hand camera. I filmed everything: stray dogs wandering alleys, the flicker of porch lights, faces that didn't seem to fit anywhere either. Celeste called it a hobby. But for me, it was survival. Behind the lens, no one could interrupt or diminish me. No one could tell me I was too small to matter. When I left home at 18, I didn't cry. I packed my camera, my silence, and a hunger to exist. Brianna got her pearls. I got purpose. Every film I made afterward was a whisper turned into proof: I'm here. Years passed before the email came, an invitation to my father's 60th birthday. No greeting, no warmth. Just an RSVP link. I stared at it, remembering the winter hallways of that house, the locked study door, the way my name never echoed through those walls. I almost deleted it. But then I stopped. My work had taught me what my childhood hadn't: you don't wait to be seen. You bring the light yourself. So I said yes, not to attend their celebration, but to reclaim my voice. If they expected the quiet daughter, they'd invited the wrong woman. I charged every battery. Labeled every drive. Practiced my calm face in the mirror. The frost I'd grown up in had taught me control. The lens had taught me courage. Both would meet in Raleigh. Invisible kids grow cameras. We learned to aim back. Secrets behind the smiles. The week before the party, I barely slept. The city hummed outside my apartment, but inside everything was too still, too loud with old thoughts. I drowned myself in work, editing footage, answering emails, pretending the RSVP hadn't happened. Pretending I wasn't about to walk into the same house that once erased me. Then Harper, my best friend, burst in like a storm, sketchpad under her arm, eyes wild. "You won't believe what I heard," she said, dropping onto my couch. She'd been sketching at a downtown cafe when she overheard Brianna on the phone, her voice sharp, conspiratorial, the tone she used when she thought no one was listening. "It's all set, Mason. Dad won't suspect a thing. Harper didn't have to explain. I knew that tone, the smugness, the certainty. My father's company was his life's work, the one thing he'd built from scratch after losing Mom. And now Celeste and Brianna, his wife and golden child, were plotting to take it from him. We stayed up all night digging. Harper remembered an old shared folder she once used with Brianna for a college project, and miraculously, Brianna had never changed the password. Inside, we found the rot, emails, scanned contracts, messages between Brianna and a man named Mason, even a draft transfer agreement for my father's company shares, all set to shift ownership into Brianna's name. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with something deeper than rage. It wasn't about money. It was betrayal, the kind that makes you question every memory you ever thought was real. Harper leaned closer, voice low. You've got enough to destroy them. Maybe, I whispered. But how do you expose rot without burning down the whole house? I saved everything onto a small USB drive. It felt unnaturally heavy in my hand, as if every quiet dinner, every insult swallowed, had been distilled into this single piece of metal. The next morning, I walked through downtown Raleigh with my camera bag slung over my shoulder, filming reflections in shop windows and strangers' faces, each one a reminder that truth always finds its moment. At sunrise, light spilled across my apartment floor, gold and fragile. The air smelled of rain and coffee. My camera blinked red, recording nothing but silence, and somehow that silence was louder than any confession I'd ever filmed. I zipped the bag, camera gear first, then the USB, then a black dress that felt more like armor than fabric. The skyline outside blurred again, but it didn't look like grief this time. It looked like resolve. By morning, I didn't hesitate. Ticket in hand, heart steady, I whispered to the empty room. This time, I'm not filming someone else's story. Silence, I realized, had never been weakness. It was fuel. The party shimmered like a lie made of light. Crystal chandeliers glowed, laughter floated like champagne bubbles, and every surface gleamed with polite wealth. I smiled, quiet and unreadable, my pulse keeping rhythm with the jazz band's low notes. Across the ballroom, my father, Thomas, stood radiant in his gray suit, shaking hands, every inch the successful man who never saw the cracks beneath him. Celeste hovered near his side, pouring charm like syrup, her laughter sweet and rehearsed. Brianna, the golden echo of her mother, followed a few steps behind, glittering under the lights. I lingered at the edges, an old habit. But this time I wasn't hiding. I was watching. When the speeches began, I slipped away. The hallway was lined with portraits of men who built legacies, men who never had to fight to be seen. At the end stood his office door, half open, waiting like confession. The desk gleamed under soft lamplight, his nameplate catching the glow. I stepped inside, the click of my heels the only sound, and placed the USB drive beside his name. Minutes later, he appeared. Abby, he said softly, as if the name surprised him. Did Celeste send you? I shook my head. No. I came because you deserve to know the truth. His brows furrowed. About what? About what they'd been planning. I nudged the USB toward him. She's trying to transfer your shares to Brianna. It's all there, emails, contracts, the works. He looked at the drive, then at me. Dozens of emotions flickered behind his eyes, disbelief, confusion, maybe even guilt. You're mistaken, he said at first. She wouldn't, he insisted. She already has, I answered quietly. The silence stretched, brittle as glass. Then he sank into his chair, opened his laptop, and pressed play. The office filled with the voices I'd carried for weeks, Brianna's smug laughter, Celeste's calm commands, Mason's careless arrogance. Every word chipped away at the image my father had spent a lifetime polishing. When the recording ended, he didn't meet my eyes. Dear God, he whispered. The faint sound of jazz drifted in from the ballroom, soft, distant, unreal. You could have humiliated us tonight, he said finally. Why didn't you? Because I wasn't trying to destroy you, I told him. I just wanted you to see me. His hands trembled slightly. Then, to my surprise, he reached across the desk and placed his palm over mine. I see you now, he said. Tears burned, not from hurt, from release. Years of silence collapsed into one small, fragile moment of understanding. He hesitated, then stood and pulled me into an awkward hug. It wasn't perfect. It was real. When he stepped back, his eyes were tired but softer. Outside, laughter rippled through the hall like nothing had happened. But something had, something irreversible. He turned back once more, voice low but steady. "You did the right thing," he said. I nodded, unable to speak. For the first time, the word family didn't feel like a wound. Truth didn't need an audience, just courage. The confrontation and quiet justice. The next morning, the sunlight felt different, sharper, more awake. It was as if the city itself knew something had changed. I met Dad at his office again, but the suit and tie were gone. He looked human. Just quiet resolve in a wrinkled shirt and weary eyes. He didn't talk much on the drive home. Only once, at a red light, he said softly, "I used to think love meant protecting people from pain." He paused, watching the traffic. Turns out, it just meant avoiding the truth. When we reached the house, Celeste was waiting on the porch, coffee cup in hand, her smile rehearsed to perfection. Brianna stood beside her, arms folded, gaze sharp. "Thomas," Celeste greeted sweetly. "You're early." Dad didn't answer. He walked straight past her, the front door swinging open like it had been waiting for this reckoning. Inside, everything gleamed, perfume, polish, power, but it all felt false now. He went directly to his study. Celeste followed, her heels clicking like a countdown. I lingered near the doorway, close enough to hear, far enough to vanish, the role I knew best. He set the USB on his desk. "I watched it," he said quietly. Celeste froze. "Watched what?" "The plan. The calls. The contracts." Color drained from her face. She started to speak, but he raised his hand. "Don't." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind that comes when love stops making excuses. Brianna stepped forward. "Dad, we didn't mean." "You meant every word," he cut in. "You treated my trust like currency." Celeste tried again. "Thomas, she's manipulating you." "She's my daughter." He looked at her, steady and calm. "And she just saved what's left of this family." The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Celeste's mask cracked, her lips trembled before the tears came, not grief, just exposure. Dad opened a drawer and slid 2 envelopes across the desk. "Divorce papers," he said. "And a withdrawal notice. You'll both need to find another place." Brianna's voice broke. "You're choosing her over us?" "No," he said quietly. "I'm choosing honesty." Celeste's eyes darted to me, sharp, pleading, the same look that used to shrink me into silence. But not this time. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Dad walked past them, pausing only once at the doorway. "Abby, let's go." And just like that, the empire they'd built on manipulation collapsed, quietly, without spectacle. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the scent of pine and dust. We drove in silence. The road stretched ahead, endless and gold under the afternoon light. After a long while, Dad said, almost to himself, "Peace feels strange." "Like something we forgot we could have," I replied softly. "Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just walks away." The rebuild, finding peace in silence. 3 months later, the old house was gone, sold quietly, emptied of every false memory. Dad and I didn't live together, but somehow, we were closer than ever. He rented a small place near the lake, where mornings smelled like pine and the air finally felt clean. Sometimes I'd visit. We'd sit on the porch, watching the water ripple against the dock without saying much. The silence between us, once heavy, now felt peaceful. He brewed coffee in the same chipped mug every morning. When I teased him about it, he'd grin, the kind of smile I'd never seen from him growing up. Unmasked. Gentle. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the trees, he turned to me. "I watched your film again," he said. I looked up, surprised. "It hurt," he admitted. "But I'm proud you had the courage to tell the truth." I wish I'd had that kind of strength years ago. His words settled over me like warmth after a long winter. For years, I'd chased a version of love that demanded silence. Now I understood, real love listens, even when it hurts. I kept making documentaries, not about strangers this time, but about voices like mine. Daughters who dared to speak. People who learned that healing sometimes begins with saying what no one wanted to hear. When my new film premiered downtown, the audience rose to clap. Not for the cinematography, for the story. For the truth. And somewhere in that crowd, I saw my father wiping his eyes. Afterward, he hugged me. No grand words, just a quiet embrace that said everything we'd both been too afraid to say for decades. As months passed, I rebuilt more than my career. I rebuilt me. The girl who once filmed shadows to feel seen was now standing fully in the light. Raleigh looked different, not smaller, not colder, just honest. Sometimes I'd drive past the old estate, now overgrown with ivy, windows hollow, secrets gone. And for the first time I didn't feel anger. Just release. I stopped asking why they'd hurt me. Some people mistake control for love, and some of us spend half our lives unlearning that lie. But healing isn't erasing the past. It's walking out of it barefoot, but free. As I packed my camera for the next trip, I whispered a quiet promise to myself. Never trade your voice for belonging again. Because truth, it's the only inheritance worth keeping. And if you've ever had to break free from your own family's shadow, share your story below. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone.
Goodbye.